Yes, Dead Space Remake is still great after 2 years, and the only way I would be able to say that statement was by replaying the game once again after those 2 years. At first thinking I should play the game on hard difficulty, but then just opting for playing it on impossible difficulty. I mean, if I was going to play it on hard to begin with, why not give it the extra challenge? Although, I haven't touched this game after I had earned its platinum trophy way back then. But hey, might as well give it a shot and tell my canon event of what had occurred in my journey throughout the Ishimura once again. I began my journey by crash landing to the Ishimura with the other crew members, at first thinking to myself before going into the lounge, how come I'm the only engineer on the ship? I then looked at the damage report and saw that the previous engineer did a terrible job. After that, we were jumped by our very first necromorph, in which I decided to do the only thing possible, run away like a coward. What? I'm not punching that thing. Are you crazy? But hey, at least I found a cool plasma cutter. Although I have no prior experience on how to use the thing. Well, no better way to learn than with experience, right? After getting through my very first necromorph, Hammond and Kendra informed me that the tram system was offline, so it was up to me to get that thing moving again. Then, this dude thought it was funny to drop from the ceiling. After I recovered a stasis module from a corpse, I got to the tram maintenance room and got to work, right after I finished getting all the loot. And without missing a beat, as soon as I pressed the button to start replacing the tram, more necromorphs came at me, but I was able to dispatch them with ease. Now, after the tram was replaced, I had to find myself a data board to fully repair this thing. While I was making my way to where the data board was located, I got my first dose of how much these things can damage me with a single hit. So, I had to be extremely careful with whatever action I took against them. One wrong move, and this journey would be over. On a side note, explosive barrels are super effective against them, as long as I'm not close to the blast zone. I then turned off the lights from the section I was currently at to open up where I would find myself a nice data board. But first, more necromorphs exploding by the power of red barrels, as well as an extremely close call. Really wasn't expecting that this early on. After making my first upgrades and fixing the tram for Hammond and Kendra, I started making my way back to where my ship was, while also looting and dealing with more necromorphs. In short, my ship was in such a terrible condition that necromorphs thought it'd be great to just blow it up and give me an extended stay at the Ishimura. Those necromorphs sure are thoughtful, right? I decided to make myself at home and go straight to the bathroom, and for some reason, there was some money and a couple of bullets. Hey, I ain't complaining, that extra money was just enough to buy myself a neat suit upgrade. Onto the medical deck. Once I made it to the medical deck, I found myself a kinesis module that was just my right size and a pulse rifle from someone who was kind enough to gift it to me. I then found a dude that was bashing his head against the wall. At first, I was a little concerned, but then I saw this sweet stasis recharge station right next to him and completely forgot about him. I also found this other dude on the ground before getting jumped by a necromorph, first chucking a fire extinguisher at it before promptly killing it. This place was definitely giving me the creeps. It didn't help that I had to relearn how to navigate through the 0G sections and manage my oxygen levels. Oh yeah, this necromorph also decided to get the jump on me. I started to notice that the ship's environment would sometimes have other stuff in the distance, or play a prank on me, but now that I have the force, I could start chucking way more stuff at the necromorphs, although some encounters would be too close for my own comfort. This would also help me in saving up some ammo, as long as I didn't miss my shots or end up grabbing the wrong thing. I made my way to the biological prosthetics room, encountered a different type of necromorph, and used a combination of bullets and the force to deal with them. I also did the same thing for any other necromorphs. It definitely saved me some ammo. Remember how I said that I didn't want to grab the wrong thing with the kinesis module? Well, that sometimes would happen in encounters that I couldn't see a thing, so I resorted to using raw firepower. I was getting too many close calls while making my way to the captain's rig. Some were a little too close and I got extremely lucky. Let's hope that my luck doesn't run out in the worst spot possible. Once I found the captain's body, this thing decided to transform the captain into a necromorph. So I decided to use my own explosive magic against it and then run around the table with the other thing before throwing random bullshit at it. I really don't know how the shit recorded that, but thanks for reminding me of what happened when I first arrived. Anyways, time for me to get to the hangar bay so I can reach engineering, but not before looting the place and dealing with other necromorphs along the way. If I say so myself, I think I was getting pretty good at throwing stuff and using explosive magic against the necromorphs, but one necromorph in particular decided to use my own trick against me. You sly dog, you almost got me! Now that the centrifuge was up and running again, I got another close call while making my way out of there. I think it was a terrible idea to reload right in front of its face. After getting grabbed by a tentacle, I shot it down with ease. I ain't going down like that. Then, I was rewarded with a Ripper, in which I decided to use it in a test run against other necromorphs, with a little bit of explosive magic to spice it up a bit more. While I was browsing through my inventory, some necromorphs decided to give me a welcome party, and I have brought fireworks to celebrate. I then made the decision to temporarily shut off the life support to send some fuel for the engines, but after almost suffocating, I decided to shut off the lights instead and be on my way. I then went to the workbench to upgrade my weapons, but a necromorph decided to attack me while I was busy deciding what to upgrade. What a rude bastard! While making my way to the engines, I found another weapon, and one that I would upgrade for the entire journey, the flamethrower. Oh yeah, another dude also decided to scream at me. I then field tested the flamethrower with a necromorph that kindly volunteered for the job. Yup, I'm definitely going to be using this weapon. Once I reached the engine and reignited it, it was time for me to start throwing even more random bullshit at the necromorphs. And while I was in the middle of a conversation, more necromorphs decided to attack me. How dare they? But hey, the flamethrower is pretty cool. You know what made me hate these things even more? They also decided to appear in a safe room after I went and upgraded my weapons. They really don't get the idea of privacy. Anyways, time for me to go meet Hammond at the bridge. Hammond told me that the ADS cannons weren't working. Great, more stuff that I had to fix. While he was explaining what needed to be done, I activated another side mission. Forgot to mention that I had activated Nicole's side mission as well. I'm doing all the side missions too, you know. But these will be done along the way, after I first dealt with Big Jaws McGraw and get myself my third weapon, the contact beam. I then ran around the place a little more, sending the power over to the ADS cannons and dealing with another Big Jaws McGraw. But I did start to notice that my supplies were starting to run low. Thankfully, I was always looting and saving more stuff in the store storage for future emergencies. I then went outside to calibrate the ADS cannons, avoiding both any asteroids and necromorphs that could potentially end my journey. After the calibration was completed, I got a transmission from Nicole saying that the medical deck was a place for survivors to go to. I started going over there as fast as I could, but some things decided to halt that progress. Jackasses, making me use up even more stuff. Of course, these weren't the only ones making me use up even more resources. They really are making me work for this, aren't they? Once I got to the medical deck, a doctor named Mercer thought I was coming here for salvation, which I kindly said no and made my way to finding Nicole. The place was infested with parasites that weren't there before, but there was no way I was going to stop until I found the source of Nicole's signal. It was all a trap set up by the doctor. For some reason, I have a feeling that I've seen this guy somewhere else before. He kept me in stasis for an absurd amount of time until the hunter awakened. Now I see what Jill was going through with Nemesis. It didn't help that other necromorphs were joining in my encounters with it, as well as me having trouble looking for items to use against them in the dark. But I somehow managed to pull through, while also getting my last weapon, the line gun. Not only was I running extremely low on my resources, but Mercer also decided to poison the entire area for funsies. Thankfully, I found a way to purify the air once again, and I also went back a couple of areas to pick up stuff that I had missed when I first got my clearance. I started to prepare for an encounter with the hunter by placing as many throwable objects in my way to use against it and other necromorphs that would surely come my way. Unfortunately, I didn't anticipate the necromorphs to move all the throwable objects I had collected, so I had to resort to good old blasting. Clever girls. Now that the hunter was frozen, I was able to go back to the areas where he was chasing me around, dealing with other random encounters and finding a power node? How the hell did I miss this one? It was literally in the room where I found the line gun. Guess I really was panicking. I went back to analyze the tissue sample I got from the hunter, while dispatching of more necromorphs extremely quick and recovering all the resources I had used up from them. I also found the ICU bed to continue Mercer's questline. The reward will surely be worth it later on, but for now, I had to make my way to hydroponics to deal with an environmental hazard. You know the drill, throw random bullshit at necromorphs while searching for all the Weezers to get rid of the pollution. Sounds easy in theory, but there were more obstacles than I thought in the new necromorph type to add to my paranoia. I also almost suffocated due to this dude being stubborn. While making my way to another Weezer, a tentacle decided to grab my leg and tried to insta-kill me, but I have a good aim now, so I took care of it immediately. I also avoided the flames from the filtration tube. This place really wants to keep me on my toes. After finding the last Weezer, it was time for me to take on the Leviathan, but not before looting everything that was floating around first. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. Once that was done, the Leviathan didn't pose much of a threat. I kept most of the items I had looted. Things were finally turning in my favor. But now I had to go back to the mining deck to send out an SOS signal. Although I was more prepared than before, I still needed to be careful. Who knows what else could appear while I'm in there. I found a message left behind by Jacob Temple. Glad to know another engineer is still alive and kicking in this place. Once I cleaned up the anomalies that were floating around the place, a lot of exploding necromorphs wanted to blow me up and end my journey. Thankfully, I had quick thinking and stasis by my side, so no exploding for me. Hammond also found the marker, which gave us all a massive headache, in which I took my frustration out against necromorphs with explosive magic. Let's try to avoid any future headaches, shall we? After riding the lift, I found Nicole. Glad to see she's whole and not in pieces. Great, necromorphs decided to try and chop her up. I ain't letting them do that. After Nicole and I went our separate ways for the time being, I flew around the place, finding both resources and upgrades that I'll be using later on. I bought a level 4 suit before heading out to place the SOS signal on an asteroid that was on the ship, while also noticing that the flamethrower is completely useless in a vacuum environment. Good to know. While making my way to save my progress, a necromorph attempted to sneak attack me while I was vulnerable. You're not pulling any cheap tricks on me, jackass. Here's my fireball jutsu. I had to go back to the asteroid. Turns out I forgot to put the SOS signal on the asteroid. Silly me. Once I sent out the asteroid, the hunter returned for the salty run back, in which I quickly made my escape out of the mining deck and onto more exploring in other areas now that I had higher clearance before heading out to the hangar once again. Upon reaching the hangar, I was ambushed by more necromorphs. They were starting to become a lot more dangerous, but so was I. After that, I went over to the comms section, finding Bailey's rig and fixing the communication control. I also found out that fire wasn't too effective against these big Slenderman type necromorphs, and another one used the elevator to ambush me. I wasn't expecting that. Then, the Leviathan was grabbing onto the long range antenna, so it was time for me to take it down once again and fix the antenna to get help from the Valor. With the Leviathan now gone for good, the antenna was fixed. Unfortunately, the Valor had already made a fatal mistake which made it come crashing. Now that the Valor made a crash landing to the Ishimura, Hammond and I decided to loot it for its singularity core. He had also tasked me to deal with a nuclear bomb. I really don't get paid enough for doing all of this. There was also a brand new type of necromorph, one that was extremely quick. Once those scenarios were over, I decided to swing by the shooting range. A little something to ease my time here never hurt anyone, but I was creepily ambushed. That was one hell of a way to practice my aim. After going through a potential insta-kill section and a speedy dude going back and forth like a boss, I prepared for another encounter that was going to take place and took care of everyone without much issue. The contact beam really melts all these dudes without problems. I then traversed through the ship's active engine and roasted a couple of necromorphs that thought it was a good idea to jump me. After making an adjustment to the power control, I was now able to make my way to the upper deck and get my hands on the singularity core after Hammond sacrificed himself. The Valor was now about to self-destruct, so it was time for me to bounce and get out of the ship before it was too late. Now that I made it back to the Ishimura with the Valor Singularity Core, I could now make my way to the shuttle to fix it and get out of this place for good. But first, I had to deal with a couple of side missions, such as getting myself the Master Override Key to access all locked areas and chests in the Ishimura. There were a lot of items that would prove useful for me. The bad thing was that some locked doors were in previous sections that I had previously explored a lot earlier in my journey. Thankfully, I also had to revisit hydroponics to both clear out a pending side mission and get the best upgrade for my stasis module, while taking care of other necromorphs that were lurking around. Once all that exploring was over, I had to make my way to the crew deck to start fixing the shuttle. Upon reaching the crew deck, there were a lot of corpses on the ground, in which I promptly started to tear apart. Really don't want to risk the reviving necromorph bringing them back all from the dead later on. After me doing all that disaster, I purchased my final suit upgrade and played some 0G basketball to ease off some of the tension before going back to fixing the shuttle. Guess getting a high score in 0G basketball awarded me with a lot of stuff. I'm not complaining, but the necromorphs are. Also, the reviving necromorphs did appear in the room that had all the corpses, but they were disappointed to not find anything to revive. Upon making my way to the first floor of the crew deck, Mercer was there having a conversation with Jacob Temple until he ultimately gave Temple an extremely slow headshot and releasing the Hunter at me once again. The Hunter unfortunately didn't know that I had just earned a high score in 0G basketball and my arms were a lot stronger than before. Now that's character development. Now that I was a lot more equipped than when I first started, the necromorphs were starting to see my progress with all the weapons I had in my arsenal, but that didn't stop them from trying out cheap tricks against me once again. Also, field testing the new stasis upgrade I had earned from a side mission I had cleared out against the pregnant necromorphs was a joy, since no more bullets would need to be used against them. The Hunter didn't take my rejection well and decided to chase me around once again, and other necromorphs were wanting to give me a hug. These guys really don't like giving me my personal space. Once that was over, I ended up finding Mercer's room to clear up the final side mission I had pending before making my way to the executive quarters and finding a weird altar that made me buzz. But nothing happened to me. Weird. After making a complete makeover of all the rooms and finding the executive's keycard, I found some weird writing on the wall that didn't do anything when I followed its instructions. Well, I can probably figure that out later. For now, I had to meet up with Dr. Kyne and get rid of the last tendril to finally fix the shuttle and return the marker to its planet, though I think Dr. Kyne might be a little on the flip side. I started making my way to the shuttle, while being extremely close to having my journey ended by a kamikaze necromorph that was a little too close to me. Thankfully, I was able to dodge everyone without much issue and transport the marker to the shuttle. Upon seeing the shuttle, I started to prepare all the barrels and items I would be using for the inevitable final encounter with the hunter. And surprisingly, everything went extremely smooth on my end with all that extra planning I did beforehand, and the hunter would no longer be chasing me after getting completely cooked by the shuttle's engine. Mercer would also be gone for good after being squished by the tentacle before grabbing onto me and trying to end my journey one final time. Now I had to transport the marker to the shuttle once again and finally get out of the Ishimura. I made my way to the tram station maintenance once again to start transporting the marker, but not before scouting the area and planning my route for another encounter that was going to occur. The marker would surely call for help once I start moving it, so I best be prepared for all situations to avoid getting killed after coming this far into the journey. I was able to clear out the encounter with most of my resources intact. Now I had to go back to where I had first crash landed in the Ishimura and load the marker into the shuttle before taking off. It's certainly been some time since I first got here. Can't believe I'm getting this close to finally ending this. Now that the shuttle was here, I worked on transporting the marker while also getting a lot more loot for me to sell later on. Testing out my gear with more necromorphs that volunteered to do so, and was now ready to leave the Ishimura with Kendra and Dr. Kyne. But as we were about to leave, Kendra shot Dr. Kyne and took off with the shuttle. Turns out she was working with someone else. That traitor. I then got a call from Nicole. She found a way to recall the shuttle back to the Ishimura to ensure that we both escaped. So I made my way to her location, finding more weird writing on the wall and the random dude that I put out of its misery. We recalled the shuttle to our location, and since there weren't any more pending side missions in the Ishimura, it was time to head to Aegis 7 and return the marker. I also brought Dr. Kyne's corpse with me. He's coming with us too. Upon exploring what I could from Aegis 7's landing point, I started to prepare to transport the marker, while also preparing for the final battles that would come my way. It was time to rip and tear like a certain Slayer taught me. I was able to clear out the last insta-kill scenario. That was on my way and keep on tearing all necromorphs that came my way until I had finally placed the marker in its respective spot. It was then revealed to me that Nicole was dead since the beginning of my journey, and it was Elizabeth Cross who was helping me this entire time. The worst part was that Kendra now had the marker once again and was going to leave with the shuttle. I had to reach the shuttle before it was too late. I was preparing for what would be my final battle, and thankfully, I was more than ready to take on whatever was coming my way. All the struggles I endured throughout my journey paid off in the long run. Upon reaching the shuttle's landing spot, the hive mind had reawakened and killed Kendra, setting the stage for the final battle. At first, I was a little nervous, but then noticed that the hive mind was a complete and utter pushover. My weapons were absolutely tearing it apart. I even had enough time to start seeing my current inventory and do some other stuff while it was throwing its tantrum in the background. The hive mind, not content with my obvious taunting, decided to grab my leg and tried to insta-kill me. I won't lie, this actually got me a little nervous, since I know my aim can sometimes be the absolute worst, but I managed to land the final shot so that it would let me go. It was now time for me to escape with the shuttle and end this journey. The canon event was complete. As I mentioned at the beginning, Dead Space Remake is still an amazing game that I highly recommend to anyone that's either interested in survival horror games or is a big fan of the Dead Space franchise. Replaying the game after 2 years and still having an amazing time with it really shows how good of a game this is. Playing it on impossible difficulty, as well as using the weapons that I opted to not use in my first playthrough, really made this experience a lot of fun for me. I hope to see you all next time, and here's to hoping that if the Dead Space sequels ever get a remake, they turn out to be just as good as this one. See ya!
Isaac, it's me. Oh, I wish I could talk to you. I'm sorry.